Hi, kitty cats. I am Amethyst Herrick, your hostess for the Purple Podcast, a weekly discussion from your friends at the Purplepaw clan, exploring the intersection of identity and gender, sexuality and intimacy, and community and spirituality. This content right here is brought to you by supporters of the Purplepaw clan. If you're already a supporter, let me first thank you for your ongoing support. Because you know pretty dang well that subscribers not only receive new content directly to their email inboxes every time it publishes, but they're also able to interact with every single one of the contributors directly, which includes me. And I know I want to interact with me, and you should too. So if you would like to support shows just like this one, as well as the other podcasts, videos, and written articles by our contributors, I hope you'll consider subscribing using those links you're going to find down there in the show notes. Today, I'm very, very excited to be speaking with a relatively new friend of mine, Dr. Allison Battles. Hi, Allison.
I am excited to be here today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'll ask you that again at the end. You know, if we hit the end and you go, yeah, you know, the excitement, it wore off really quickly. I'll understand.
Yeah.
You know, it's cool.
Well, I tend to have a lot of, good long-term energy. Who knows? But, if all of a
Yeah,
sudden you see me kind
right.
of like flopped here on my desk, we will know. We will know.
There we go. The excitement has drained away like a cheap bucket, like water in
Exactly.
a cheap
My
bucket.
neurodivergent masking is gone. I'm dead.
Perfect, very perfect. Um, I met Allison at a pagan conference, which was really super cool. I think you did. I think the presentation was about tarot, wasn't it?
hmm
If I remember
Yeah, kind
correctly.
of the
Okay.
ways that we can use tarot for trauma healing in particular.
Ooh, that was it.
hmm
Yeah, that was such a good one.
Thank you.
Um, well, sure. Oh, I mean, otherwise, why would I want to talk to you more,
I know.
right?
This is fair. This is fair.
Yeah. So Allison is a licensed clinical psychologist, a trauma specialist, and a certified therapeutic game master. I like that there was a certification in that.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
that's amazing.
Oh, it's wonderful. Well, it's great now because especially in the sense of it's still a newer modality
Oh,
utilizing like
sure.
Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop for healing. So it's nice that there are trainings out there for it now.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And if, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, I've done a few podcasts about sort of the healing qualities of RPGs in general, especially tabletop
That's
role playing
awesome.
games. So, yeah. So that's why I have questions about it if you
Yeah.
wondered. So Allison, as part of Battle Robin's consulting, helps clients cultivate meaningful, values aligned relationships with themselves and others. And I think themselves is
hmm
kind of a big thing. We don't oftentimes talk about that.
hmm hmm
So let me start with the Allison Battles origin story. Um, what happened as you were growing up
hmm
that so laser focused you on this idea that we should all develop identity and agency in particular?
Yeah. So for myself, I am a queer pagan woman. I grew up in the South. I also grew up in a military family, and
Mm,
so for my family and my upbringing, there was definitely a lot of pressure to be normal. I very much came into this world screaming. Trust me, my parents will can tell you at nausea those stories that I did not stop crying as a child. And for me, it really was this element of I got a lot of feedback growing up about being too much, too big, too loud, too excitable, too
mm,
passionate, too everything. And I tried my hardest as a kid to put myself into this box of what a Southern girl could be, which
sure.
was demure and polite and quiet and overly generous. It was self-sacrificing, and those are in many different ways can be very helpful qualities. The problem was it also really had me try to shave off a lot of parts of myself.
Mm,
Basically that element of like I'm a dodecahedron and I was told to fit into this square hole and that just doesn't fit. So a lot of my own areas of struggle really centered around that idea of agency and identity. I tried my hardest as a kid to try to exact agency through perfectionism and be able to have a sense of,
Sure.
acceptance within the world. And I found that the more I tried to, lean into being that perfect person, um, the sicker that I became. And
Mm,
for me, it really kind of reached a threshold of having to have a really hard look at myself whenever I was in high school of if I stay on this path, I will objectively die. And having to really face that crossroads of do you stay on this path that is actively harming you or do you strike out to do something different? And so I struck out to do something different and I got involved in my own therapy. Um, I had a negative experience with the first therapist and wonderful experiences with therapists after that. But it also was through that process that I learned a lot about myself, who I am, how do I experience community, how do I experience the world around me. And that really helped me to get a better sense of who I am. But more importantly, I would argue who I want to be. That
mm.
was such a big area of inspiration for me in wanting to pursue graduate school. Now, interestingly enough, psychology is actually my second career. I actually, my heart hurts to even say it now. I used to work in politics, and I worked for, a senator as well as a representative at the in our national Congress, and those
Do
experiences.
you want me just to cut it short now, or you are gonna this has a happy ending,
It does
right?
have a happy ending, thankfully. It was a happy ending
Good.
of that was the wrong path to go down, and that was an
Yeah.
affirming experience of like, "Ooh, no, that one ain't for me." But I also got to be involved in a lot of public policy and especially work on
Mm,
mental health equity, and that was fantastic because that was a real experience of being able to see how disproportionate our care for mental health truly is, and that lit
hmm.
a huge fire under me, and I really actively then went back to school for a psychology degree to pursue this more intentionally. So, though it was a wrong career and a really, really hard experience, I learned a lot about myself and the world and what I want the world to become. So,
Yeah.
I even joke that I am a cliche product of my parents being my dad served in the Air Force for 25 years and my mom is a licensed clinical social worker. And so I myself ended up specializing particularly in military related trauma, especially during my early years of graduate school.
Yeah.
Um, so a lot of these experiences, also even in grad school, really shaped me now because my grad school is a very stereotypical grad school in the sense of it really pushed forward a lot of the um, like biomedical model of care. It really
Mhm.
emphasized more of CBT related kind of healing approaches. So it was very regimented and very much furthering this idea of normalization. The
Yeah.
problem was, as I actually got into being a clinician, I realized, excuse my language, that shit just doesn't work. It doesn't. It does not fully encapsulate the human experience. If anything, it can cause a tremendous amount of harm in ways that we
Yeah.
pathologize what it is to live as a person and to figure out yourself as a person, but also in the larger systems that we live within. So that has been a big place where my private practice really centers um, these ideas of multiculturalism, of decolonization, of liberation, of ways in which we can deconstruct our own internalized societal programming, figure out who it is we really want to be, and then start to engage in the world through that lens and cultivate community that also centers that type of healing.
Wow.
Yeah,
Already, I'm like, "Jeez."
I got
Well,
a lot of passion
because
for this.
no, that's great. No, I love it. The You had mentioned, well, let me back into this from a different direction. Because if you look at Western society, like typical Western society, right, we value this idea of like some dude on a ranch in Montana or something, right?
Mhm,
The rugged
mhm.
individualist,
Pull yourself up by your
right?
bootstraps.
Yeah,
Mm,
but you're being exactly who you are. But you use the phrase mental health equity.
mhm.
So I because I wanted since Western society sort of prizes this idea of individualism,
Mhm.
how is it that we end up with inequity in mental health?
Yeah. That's a really great question. I think in I have a lot of different ideas around this, so bear with me as I also organize my thoughts with this. I think one of the big things is because we almost have a hyperfixation on individualism, we also
Hmm.
we also do not often take into account the impacts of relational community and systemic elements on the individual. We talk about
Right.
diagnosing one person and treating one person, but if one person is struggling because as a product of the systems that they live within, this isn't actually a person problem, this is a systems problem, but we don't talk or
Sure.
work at that systems level. And so that is really where I find, especially in like more Western mental health, that very much centers a lot of Eurocentric, Western biomedical models
Right.
within how we think about healing care. Also, what does it mean to struggle? This is really where the field can have a lot of limitations of we are treating the individual who is suffering within the system. And we're not actually
Yeah.
looking at that larger system level.
I hear what you're saying because it's interesting how we have these, it's two, like we have these two sort of opposing poles on us.
Mm,
You're supposed to be an individual. You have the right to freedom of expression and
mhm.
everything, right? You have all these rights, but you should fit in too.
Yeah,
You
exactly. It's like
really should fit in. Yeah.
we want you to be an individual up until you reach a certain point of individualism. We want you to be an
Right.
individual that is within our societally digestible box that we have constructed for you. And I think this
Yes.
is really where we run into that box of what folks want us to fit into is inherently created based upon these larger paradigms that influence thought and policy development. So this is where things like
Yeah.
colonialism, capitalism, patriarchy, all of those that shape a literal consciousness of a nation, and I'm more specifically talking about US, other nations have been able to do this a bit differently, but it's very pervasive, especially
Sure.
colonialism and capitalism and patriarchy. But these are what has constructed this box of what is considered normal. And if you are outside of the normal box, well, now we don't want you to be an individual. Now you need to learn some type of coping skills to get back into that box so you're easier to use, manipulate,
Right.
interact with, whatever it is.
And is that it? Is it just about manipulation? Is it just use? I mean,
I have to hope not. Like I will say, as a healer, as a believer in change, as a I would call myself to like nowadays a tarnished optimist. I have to hold out hope that we can be better. And I think that's
yeah.
what so many people are clamoring for nowadays is this system does not work. This system
Yeah.
kills and we need to
Mm.
do something different. And the hard part is the different isn't just at this one person level. It is community, society, and systems.
Mhm. I gotta wonder how you start healing a system.
That honestly, and that what
You'll
that is
notice that was no question. I'm sorry,
yeah.
but
That's okay. And it's one that I find myself still really sitting with because I will be very transparent. I think in the spectrum of liberation psychology, decolonizing psychology, I still very much am growing in my understanding of this. Like
mm,
I have pulled from so many different like places of learning and like just education and mentorship. Um, from Ignacio Martin Barro, who was the originator of liberation psychology,
yeah,
to Dr. Jennifer Mullen, who wrote Decolonizing Mental Health. There's a lot of different people I've really tried to pull my own knowledge from. And that is
yeah,
also a direct product, even of my graduate school having a real how do I say this? A real lack of understanding within these capacities and causing direct harm to students of color. And my own lack of understanding and also my own complacency and complicitness in silence, I did not see the harm that was being done. And whenever it was brought to the forefront, that was one of those moments of like, oh man, I am wrong. I am in the wrong
Mm,
and I am doing wrong and I need to step up and be doing something more. So my internships and residencies really centered this type of learning and perspective. And that's what something I keep on growing in. So I'm not going to be here to be like, I'm the expert per se on this. This is something I am growing in as a clinician and a human being, which is also why I'm really passionate about it, because I think we need more people who are having these conversations, who are speaking out and having and
right.
encouraging and motivating that type of change.
Right, right. Well, I mean, and that was one of the first things we spoke about was this
Hmm.
idea that we 'cause just let me actually try this a different direction too,
Hmm.
because you had said you almost all therapy at this point is focused at the individual level, and
Oftentimes.
I think that turns. Oh, is there are there some?
There
Oh
are
well, I mean, I
others,
guess there's
there are others. So, like, there are indeed more community-based approaches that focus
okay,
on, collective healing, peer support,
okay,
like grassroots networks rather than
yeah,
like
okay,
institutionalized, indigenous practices, body-based practices. There's even
okay,
things like eco psychology, that is also looking at like other types of like connections between environment and, kind of human consciousness. So there are other types of therapy, but it still often is very individually centric, which is
yeah,
where I think greater efforts towards community and collective healing is really needed.
yeah, I agree. We Because yeah, one of the first things we talked about was the idea that everybody ends up becoming like this collection of labels, right?
Hmm.
Or pathologies.
Yeah.
And I know, especially once I spent several years not engaging with the queer community because it was like, well, I'm trying to fit into science and technology. Well,
Hmm.
technology anyway. And when I got back into to start talking with people in the queer community, a lot of times what I heard were, well, here are all my diagnoses.
Hmm.
Here's the trauma I've gone
Yep.
through. And I guess, my opinion is that we end up needing to take this holistic view of these things, not this reductionistic,
Hmm.
you have this one pathology, because all these pathologies end up interacting.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
you don't have one trauma that creates one pathology. So
Hmm.
you're saying yes, so I'm going to stop talking and let you talk instead because
Oh,
you're the one who knows.
I'm just vibing right along with what you're saying, because it is,
Right.
and this is where I think that so we all as human beings have brains that are organized to categorize the things in our world. It is how we have
Yeah.
evolved. It is how we as a species have been able to stay safe. Okay, berry looks like this, and Bob over here died because of that. Okay, don't eat this berry. But this berry over here that looks like this, nobody died from that, so we're going to eat that. It is a fundamental process of the human psyche to classify and categorize. The
Yeah,
hazard,
sure.
I think, is the ways in which we have utilized that categorical system to basically medicalize normal distress. So
Hmm.
I think whenever we talk about the spectrum and complexities of the human experience, which is vast, 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 vast,
Right.
the creating of a diagnostic system was intended to help to add clarity to something that can feel so large, so ambiguous. We see this happen
Right.
across cultures where, even in like indigenous cultures, there will be, okay, these different types of, practices or herbs or medicinals are really good for X, Y, and Z struggles. So this kind of helps us to know what to give to what. This is very fundamental whenever it comes to how do we actually help and treat the right thing. The problem is, I find in Western society that this has moved more into the spectrum of how are we now labeling and classifying a person's intrinsic worth and humanity. That is where I
Yes.
think we end up with a real big struggle. Because in a
Yeah.
big way, the DSM, the Diagnostic Statistics Manual, which is the go-to, at least especially in the US, way of diagnosing what folks got going on, it pathologizes common human experiences like grief,
Right.
anxiety, mood fluctuations, gender, sexual orientation, all of these things. So that ends up being a real problem because we are saying that you are having this experience, so you're not fitting into our happy, normal, easy to interact with box. And so you have something
Right.
going on and you are somehow wrong or bad because of this. And that ultimately becomes something that gets fused with our sense of ourselves.
Hmm.
Um, Also, another big issue with the DSM is this idea that the DSM really prioritizes reliability, so consistent use between clinicians over validity. They are definitely working on it, and I know there's probably clinicians out there that will harp on me for this one. It is a work in progress. I'll acknowledge, but it often really with that validity, the expense is more of that nuanced, contextualized understanding. When I work with my trainees, it is like, yes, we may be talking about this diagnosis, which we have to use for insurance purposes, but we're more talking about beyond that. Like, that is one label, that is one tiny, tiny portion of this equation. What is our
Right.
conceptualization, our understanding of this whole person? How they understand themselves, others, the world around them, how they make sense of that, their areas of meaning making. Is spirituality in the mix? What are their existential beliefs? How do we understand that more than we understand a label? But our society, oftentimes, we really want to understand ourselves. And if the way of understanding ourselves has that we've been given is this classification system that does not take the larger context of you into account, we
Hmm.
as a society get locked into the labels that we put on things.
Yes, I would also. I'm not disagreeing. I do, and
Also
I
cool
would almost
if
classify. Okay, hang on. Let me find a way to disagree.
you
I would.
are.
Because I would call that, I would think of that as almost like a I'm gonna coin a word, like an over
Mhm,
scientificization. That we go, well, it's scientific if we could, because you brought up reproducibility.
mhm,
I'm paraphrasing you, but
mhm,
the reproducibility across clinicians was
mhm.
more important than validity. And I'd love to, can you give me like quickly what you mean by validity
Yeah.
on that? And I'll go back
So,
to point I was making.
yeah, I think about validity as in like whether or not this is actually happening the way I'm thinking it's happening. So I may be like, yes, this person has PTSD. But if I'm not really looking at the nature and the flavor and the context of what that is, I could be
Hmm.
treating the very wrong thing. Like
Okay.
complex PTSD, moral injury, they're not in the DSM yet. And yet they are fundamentally need to be treated in a different way because of how they present.
Okay. I see. I see. So you're talking, so reproducibility of like
More like
observing and
reliability that like
diagnosing symptoms?
yeah, like
Okay,
more of that
reliability.
reliability that, across clinicians, we can know that if somebody is coming to me with low mood, loss of interest in the things that they once found pleasurable, challenges with sleep, under eating, these types of symptoms, suicidality, they're most likely experiencing something in the depression family. So that
Sure.
has helped clinicians be able to parse out the different kind of
Mhm.
spectrums of the human experience. So that can be quite helpful. If we stop there, that's where it gets harmful because we're not
Okay.
taking context into account in how we're really understanding a person or
Sure.
treating a person.
Yeah. Because DSM-3 and 3.5 were very much going down. It was a checklist almost. We
Mhm.
just go, well, we got 3 out of 5, so you must be,
Yep.
depressed,
Mhm.
with your example. I know DSM-4 was supposed to address that to a certain extent,
Mhm.
and DSM-5 is they're trying to like make it more personal.
Mhm.
And yet, if you look at some of these things, um, like I think we want to make things scientific. I
Mhm.
never came up with a term. Over scientificize. I don't know how
Yeah,
I want to
something
put
like
that,
that,
but
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
we want to say. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was about to say word in development.
Mm-mm. Yeah, I'll put up a little construction sign or something around
Yeah.
the word, but it's when you said that, I pulled my straw out really quickly, and then I ended up with a splash of water on me. I just want you to know I'm not taking this out of the video.
Okay.
This is
This is happening. This is here. This is real life, folks. We're
anytime.
getting in it.
Yes. If there's something embarrassing, so like you can see right there, I've got a little splash of water.
Oh,
There's fun
good.
times.
Ain't,
Yeah,
ain't
good
nothing wrong
times.
with that.
Right, right. It was dribbling down my face too. So
This is a very human show right now. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. All sides, you are welcome here.
always right. It's always easy though. But have you've noticed, right? I mean, like if you like it's sometimes if you do something embarrassing, at least to me, I just go, "Oh my gosh, did you see that embarrassing
Yep.
thing?" Because it's so much easier
Hmm.
than like sitting there trying to act normal after
Yes.
something and wondering, did that person see it? Did that person know that I just snorted? Did that person see a piece of food fell out of my mouth?
Yes.
Did the person see that I've got this splash of water now on my chest? Much
Oh,
easier just to go, God, did you see that? That was really out of character.
yeah. I feel that. I really do. Um,
Uh,
oh,
Although anybody who knows me will go, no, the splash of water and stuff on you, that's not out of character.
that's,
But
I know it's one of those
the
like,
embarrassing stuff.
my own ADHD. It's like I keep on, that's why I had to put the coffee mug down of just like, don't trust myself with that. We're going to end up with coffee everywhere again.
So I'm trying to remember what the hell we were talking about. Oh, over sciencing.
Overscientificate, yeah.
Yeah,
But I
over
do think you're
sciencing
onto
things.
something there. And this is like one of the struggles, because especially as I think about the history of Western psychology, Western
Yeah,
psychology has tried so desperately to be seen as the same as actual physical medicine, which, to
sure,
be
sure.
fair, we are coming from a painful history of phrenology, of of other different kind of avenues where we have attempted to
Sure.
classify the human experience in ways that caused a lot of harm and did not have any type of evidence base. So I understand, and I do think it is valuable what we are doing in trying to operationalize, if you will, the
hmm
human experience. The problem also becomes is that as we are so hyper focused on the evidence base for it, we also aren't questioning where's that, who is, what is getting funded, what is not getting funded,
hmm
who is the gatekeeper in determining what is evidence based versus not evidence
Right,
based. Because even
right.
as I think about like TARPGs, therapeutically applied role playing games, like I just published a research study earlier this year on some pilot data with this, and it's like the data is growing there, but it is still very, very small and got rejected from so many different journals who were just like,
Oh
we have
my
no idea what
gosh.
on earth this even is. So no, of course we're not going to take a look at your paper. And so this
Yeah.
is the hazard that does come with like innovation is the field itself has a very big gatekeeping, and in sometimes that can be beneficial, and other times it is motivated by other things,
Yeah.
which can be where really helpful modalities can get like pushed to the wayside because they're not getting the
Right.
funding or the support to be able to be investigated to see what really is the benefit that could come from them.
hmm I want to. You had said it's not like medicine, and I want to. There was a psychiatrist,
Hmm.
right? So now I'm gonna bring in that one person who's supposed to be the medical side of psychology, right? Which is, I know, a horrible definition for psychiatry. Run with me. The psychiatrist who headed the committee
Hmm.
that revised DSM-4 to make DSM-5 was quoted as saying, and I'm maybe I should have said quoted, was paraphrased saying, because this is more close. But he said we have 50 years because he's talking about the history of the DSM,
Hmm.
which apparently went back 50 years at the time. So I think that was 2015 or so that
Okay,
DSM-5 came out, something like that.
something like that. Yeah.
But but he said we have 50 years of research in psychology and psychiatry, medicine and neurochemistry and
Hmm.
everything, and we have no real test for any of the conditions in this book,
Yeah.
and like no objective test.
Hmm.
So
self-report
So while you,
measures,
yeah,
evaluations, looking at convergence of evidence. But yeah, it's not like I can, have somebody here, please take this blood test and this will tell me what mental health
right,
condition you have. It is not,
right.
and not in that capacity, because we are talking about almost something that at times can feel, and this may be the wrong word, but I feel a little ineffable, where it is like
Hmm.
there's like this ethereal element of the human condition, the human psyche, that try as we might to like operationalize and fully quantify, we kind of can't. Which to me, as
Right.
the forever learner, is like, oh, that's so cool. That means we're going to keep on learning and keep on investigating and keep
Yeah.
on discovering. But that's also really hard when we also have welcome in capitalism. Things like our pharmaceutical and insurance systems that force us to be able to have diagnostic labels. Otherwise, you will not get paid for
Right.
your work.
Right.
And shouldn't you
Right.
not care about getting paid because you're doing an altruistic profession? No. Your therapist and everybody deserves to be paid.
No.
Everybody deserves to
Yes.
have their fundamental needs met. Like that is a big soapbox for me of like, no, we all, every single person deserves to have their fundamental needs of food, shelter, safety met. And if we don't have that, what are we doing?
What are we doing?
Mm,
I I wanna to now I'm gonna throw another monkey wrench at you.
fun.
Because like there are certain things that we go, well, these are obvious. Nutrition,
Mm-hmm.
let's say. Nutrition, right? We go, well, you're supposed to have we have FDA. Who makes these? Is it FDA, USDA? Who makes those recommendations? Oh, FDA.
I think
So the
so.
recommendations, make sure to have this percent of your
Mm-hmm.
calories protein, this percent of your calories. Now we're going to get a new one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Apparently our head of health and human services is coming out with something new. This should be
Mm, interesting.
fascinating. Yeah,
We're gonna put a pin
clearly
in
we're
that
in
one.
alignment on that one.
Gonna
So
let
but
that land.
right. So you think this should be obvious, right? You go, well, we can tell what healthy people are supposed to eat, but
Mhm,
each human
mhm.
has totally different needs. Each of us
Yeah.
has different biochemistry.
Yes.
And so, like for instance, I know people who subsist on rice and vegetables just fine, but my body really, really needs fats.
Mhm,
Why? I don't know. But if I don't eat a certain amount of fats, I'm always hungry, and then I get
mhm,
crabby, right? You get
mhm,
hangry,
mhm,
which is a thing, and I'll crash.
mhm,
Um, so I guess what I would so I even in we want to make these categories, and these categories always end up being fake
mhm,
because they may describe a certain number of people, but they do not describe
mhm.
human nutrition,
Yes.
which I think is the point. And this is, I'm
Mhm.
only talking about nutrition. But again, if you go, well, we have a DSM-5 and it's like 1,300
Oh,
pages,
yeah, I'm
right? You go,
happy
look
to
at
pull
how,
it out. It's massive.
no, thank you. No, that's cool. Thank you. I appreciate it. But and then you had to get a damn revised edition, right? Doesn't like
Yeah,
a text written. It was like a
yep.
5 TR.
Mhm,
You're like,
mhm.
really? Can I just get like the pamphlet that you revised?
Yeah.
No,
I also
no.
feel the
Here's the
same
whole thing.
whenever Wizards of the Coast came out with another, Dungeons& and Dragons edition of just like, do we really need more rules? Some of them I do like, I'll give
I
them that,
mean,
but it's still.
good point. Yeah, good point. Um, Anyway, it was like 1,300 pages, right?
Mhm,
Where was I going with any of that? I guess just to say that, but that is not psychology. That is not human psychology.
mhm.
The human experience is something that we don't fully understand, as you
Yeah,
brought up.
yeah,
And
very
that
much
should
so.
be something that we go, wow, you're different from everybody else.
Mhm,
Holy cats, let's study you.
mhm,
Instead of going, you're different from everybody else. That's probably not true. Let me find the reason why that's
yeah,
untrue. I've got one. I know I've got one. Hang
mhm.
on, page 800 and
Have you thought about
no.
self-care? Have you thought about, yeah, because then we end up with like, now we're moving into, okay, I need you to use these skills in order to,
Yes.
to fit into this box. Now, I also will fully,
Right,
state that
right.
self-awareness and having regulation skills are key to being able to get through life. It's hard whenever the
Yes.
system is saying you don't get to feel that way. Why don't you try some breathing and get back to it? That is where we end
Right.
up at a harmful place. But even to your nutrition preference, I really resonate with that, because it is like
Mm,
everybody's body is different. And how do we, they often will talk about, that bell curve. How do we get like the largest swath of people? And this is what is healthy and normal for the
right.
largest swath of people. I get that.
Right. Right.
But it also doesn't take into account that it may be that you should get, X number of vegetables, X number of other things in your day, but not everybody can even get those. Like,
There's that.
so many different communities are disconnected from healthy food. This is also the
Hmm.
same in mental health. So many communities are disconnected either from available Western mental health or from what was originally traditionally healing for their communities and cultures, which I think
Right.
is another big area that I struggle with within the Western mental health field is the ways in which we have also pathologized what is acceptable healing. This I think is really
Mm.
where we see a lot of the like disenfranchisement of like indigenous perspectives on healings, other cultural groups and ways in which they have, connected with healing. And I'm especially thinking on mental health. I think on terms of medical health, herbalism, all of that are very, very viable ways in order to treat different conditions. And if you got a broken leg, go to the hospital. Like those types of things.
Sure.
There is use for Western medicine and what we have created.
Yes.
How do we find harmony in the both? That's my take. Um,
Right.
but in terms of like mental health, we have pathologized how healing gets to happen. You have to challenge your thoughts. You have to, do these behaviors. But it may not actually like vibe with how people think and understand the world. Um,
Right.
Even like helpful models within mental health, like the ecological systems model by Bronfenbrenner. A lot of folks will talk about it. It actually acknowledges the systems that we live within, but that is also still from a Western Eurocentric perspective. And if you talk to
Mm.
folks like Dr. Jill Fish and others from the indigenous community, they've also adapted that model that actually centers time and history more than even the other systems. So you have the individual, but then you also outside of that have time and history, that context. And from indigenous perspectives, that's how they see and interact with the world. So that type of ecological outlook is really like fundamental as we think about what healing would even mean for folks in those communities. So I
Right.
think that's
Right.
really where that pathologizing not only of the diagnoses but also what is acceptable forms of healing really leads with a tremendous amount of marginalizations of practices and healing cultures that have honestly been around like arguably for millennia.
Very true. Very true. I also, because the canonical broken leg is a great example,
Hmm.
was if you have something that's an obvious injury, Western medicine works fine.
Hmm.
I think there is, and you didn't say that, by the way, was that I'm saying it somewhat dismissively because I want to contrast this idea that Western medicine is necessarily focused on healing.
Hmm.
Sorry, and I don't know how well that came out. It didn't come out exceptionally well, even in my own head. So, you know, there are healing modalities, and then there is Western medicine, and the two are like a Venn diagram.
Hmm.
But the two are not separate. The two are not the same. There's like you
Hmm.
can't go, well, Western medicine is a set of healing modalities that is inapplicable outside
Hmm.
of Western society. And I think you're saying this to a certain extent when you bring in indigenous healing. We what I find troubling about allopathic practices is that typically these allopathic practitioners will sniff at any other kind of healing,
Hmm.
even if it works. So
Hmm.
you go, well, I meditate, and this makes me feel calm.
Hmm.
You'll have a doctor, like a psychiatrist, who goes, can you just take your antidepressant,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
You don't need that crap. That's
Hmm.
bullshit. Don't
Yeah.
This like the stupid crap that like
Oh,
you have people in Tibet doing that, but that's because they're like third world weirdos. Don't do that. And you're
yes.
like, okay,
Mm.
but this works.
Yes.
So it's really the dismissal
Mhm.
of things we don't understand.
Yeah. I
And
hear this and
unfortunately, yeah,
really
that's it.
feel that a lot, especially within like the pagan community, a lot of spiritual communities, which
Mhm,
I also will
mhm.
give fully a caveat that in many ways, Western mental health is also deeply appropriated a lot of cultural practices. Meditation is a real good one,
Absolutely. Yeah.
is a real good example of that. But back to the community, I very much resonate with this, where I'm a therapist that will bring in runes, tarot. We'll bring in all of these different kind of practices, but I have to couch them under it is a projective exercise. And yes, there is projective
Yeah.
qualities, which is actually why it's really dope to be able to use. But also for some, it can have a lot more spiritual, metaphysical, existential perspective. So how do we honor
Right.
those within that as well?
And that's kind of the question.
Hmm.
And and it's a great lead in to
Yeah.
I'm like, let's talk about RPGs, like especially
Yeah.
tabletop role playing games. You mentioned Dungeons and Dragons.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, I'm curious. So when we talked about because some of what we're trying to talk about here is that we develop identity not as a system of pathology. It's not like a
Hmm.
list that you can because I even imagine people who have like a little index card or something, right? They go, "Hello, my name is Amethysta," and then
Hmm.
they go, "Well, who are you?" Is it, okay? So I am. You have to take a
Yeah.
deep breath.
Yep.
It's a big list. There's I am a transgender, pansexual, pagan, and I didn't even get to pathologies,
Yeah.
where I don't think any of those is a pathology. So, um, what the hell was I going to? So exploring identity because we're
Hmm.
not this index card
No, we are not
that
that
that I'm going
index
to
card.
carry to a party. How do role playing games first of all, like how do they even get us into
Mhm.
this state of like exploring identity?
Yeah. So I really think that because with the role playing games and utilizing those in therapy, I think in essence what this is really tapping into is the power of narrative therapies, which are
Mm,
therapies that really have us look at the stories that we tell ourselves about who we are, the world, how we get to be, but really being
yeah,
able to kind of work on deconstructing those stories that are very deficit based, that I'm not good enough or worthy or lovable or whatever that is, and works
I
on
see.
fostering and really kind of connecting with those more meaning making stories of self, looking for the exception. Oh, I'm a worthless person. Well, has there ever been a time in your life where you haven't felt 100% worthless? And then going to that memory and then working on
Yeah,
understanding that memory and pulling the threads of how that time that was the exception actually has more moments kind of across it. So that's one big thing that this type of tabletop therapy taps into. But it's also truly the power of creative and expressive arts. This is where I think
mhm,
things like art therapy, music therapy, psychodrama, all of that can be so incredibly healing. And the biggest thing that I think about these is whenever it comes to therapy, you sign up with a new therapist, you have your first session, you walk into this room, you sit down with a total rando, and all of a sudden you're told to share your entire life story of traumatic and horrific
sure.
things that have happened to you. And somehow we're going to then develop rapport and we're going to move from there. But also, what that means is my own naturally developed like self-protective defenses, because we all have them. We kind of have to have
Yeah,
them. Look outside. We all have these self-protective defenses that help us to navigate the world. Storytelling, arts, expression, helps us to be able to bypass those self protective defenses in a way that lets us get to the work more quickly and deeply than we would if I was just having you sit in the chair opposite of me and we're going to take a look at your thought and we're going to come up with the evidence for and against that thought. And we're going to generate
yeah,
alternatives for that thought. That is naturally going to feel more artificial and my guard is going to be more up. But if I'm playing, the character Kalashite, and she is a warrior and does not care about what people think, and is willing to actively say her opinion and to go in and charge into the battle, well, now I get to work on my tendency to people please. Now I get to work on having a voice and taking agency, and that
yeah.
is powerful for us because we're doing the same work, but we're doing it in a way that is fun and that bypasses our defenses so we can have more expression and more self growth, arguably, within that.
Hmm. a thought occurred to me. It was particularly when you talked about the character Kalashite. Was that
Hmm.
the? Did I get the?
That
Okay,
actually
good.
legitimately is my very first character I ever played. I'm still playing her here today.
Oh dang! Look
Oh
at that.
yeah.
Still alive. Go
Well,
Kalashite.
technically she did die, but then got resurrected. It's a thing. It's a thing.
Yeah, yeah, no, 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 no. Still alive
It's now.
means alive. Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't make a difference if there's a break in continuity. That's fine. Um, presumably, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot a little bit. Are you cisgender? You're a cisgender
Yes,
woman.
cisgender woman. Hmm.
Okay, so not even gender fluid, gender queer.
Nope, I'm
Okay,
very, very set and, kind of, I feel woman.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make that sound like it
That's
was
cool.
a. I realize you're on this show, and maybe you're like, "Oh, am I going to be shamed for not having like gender issues?" No, 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 no. I'm glad you don't,
Mm,
because you know what, Allison, they suck.
mm.
in in this world.
I work with a lot of folks, that are
I'm
working
sure
through
you
gender,
do.
but it is like I'm a pan woman, so, I'm very much kind of a part of the queer community, and
Yeah,
the
yeah,
gender issues really matter to me, and the community really matters to me, though I myself am
right.
cis.
So the reason I brought up your character, I think especially in a tabletop role
Mhm,
playing game, because you can, if you go into like a video game,
mhm,
it's easy to make, you can go into World of Warcraft and make some large breasted
mhm,
dark elf, I
mhm.
guess.
Yep, you
Forgive me, I
totally
don't
can.
play World of Warcraft.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
never
play
really played it,
play
but
Final Fantasy, but
I dated people who played it, so I know what you're talking about.
yeah, 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 you get where I'm so. But I don't. If you do this as tabletop, you have to visualize this character.
Mhm.
You have to act the character. You can't
Yes.
just go, well, here I am wearing. So here's my character wearing a thong.
Mhm,
Here's my avatar with a thong.
mhm.
I've explored gender. Um, where I was going to go with any of this, and I know you're probably like, "This, please get to a point." Um, I think the tabletop games are important in particular for exploring gender
Yes.
because you do not focus on physicality. You do not
Mhm,
focus on like physical expression, fashion,
mhm.
hair, whatever it is. You focus on the character, the actual
Yes.
person.
The personality,
Um,
that lived experience in the
yes,
world.
yes.
Mhm,
So all of this is going to go back to DSM-5 is very, very focused on physicality. When you look at
yes.
gender dysphoria, the first thing it says is something about your birth sex. And it's like,
Mhm,
well, then you look at the five, I think there's 6 classifications, one of which is, gee, I wish I could be treated as the opposite gender in certain environments.
mhm.
And I imagine there's about a bajillion women in tech right now who are like, I wish I could be treated as the opposite gender. Here
Yes.
I am in technology.
Mhm, mhm.
Is that gender dysphoria? Is this somebody who needs a diagnosis, or is this a common? This is just how we explore gender as
Yeah.
humans. Now you're going, can you get to a question, Amy?
No, you're good.
And I don't know if I've got one. I think just to say that with tabletop role playing games, that's why it's so important
Mhm.
to use your imagination.
Yeah.
I think that the imagination is where you end up getting past these stories
Yes.
that we've told ourselves. So
Yeah.
now that I've gone on for like what 18 minutes, I think
No, you're
about
good.
what
No, but
what's
I resonate with what you're sharing because
go
there
go
is.
ahead.
Like, I think especially, that's really one of those, and I would love one day to really be able to do one of my Roll for Growth groups that just
Hmm.
for, you know, gender fluid, trans, folks to
Yeah,
be able to have a group that's really centered in the exploration of that identity and the expression thereof. Because in the
yeah,
tabletop game, yeah, we'll definitely have folks like, they'll generate what they think their character looks like, but more of it is narrating how your character interacts with the world. Your party
yeah.
walks into a tavern, what do you do? And maybe for a character who really struggles with like speaking up, that's practice for them to be able to be like, okay, I'm going to try on this identity or this expression, this
Hmm.
experience, and I'm going to now engage in this imagined simulated environment through that lens. So I get direct
Right.
practice with doing this in an environment that feels way less threatening, especially because in our very first session, we go over a lot about safety, consent, risk. So by that time,
Yeah.
when we're getting into the scenes, we have had all of that conversation about how we're going to address this. So there's even like scaffolding there that's like, hey, you're not alone. I got you. If this doesn't go well,
Right.
you won't be alone, and we will process that together. So that also encourages folks to take that leap of faith into, I'm going to do it and I'm going to interact with this way, whether that is gender or relational tendencies or whatever it is. But it helps us to really get that, hands-on practice in an environment that feels way less threatening.
Sure. Are there particular games that work better for those, or particular settings? I mean, do
Mm,
you now I'm just
Honestly,
asking from like an
honestly,
RPG
it's
geek
it's
kind
it's
of.
super and that's cool. I'm always down to talk about that.
Right.
Honestly,
Who knows?
I feel as though that is kind of the beauty of tabletop games is many of the different systems really work well. You could use
Okay.
Monster of the Week and you'll still have like that the whole deep experience. You're just using different mechanics. Um,
Yeah.
hey, if we're working on being able to tolerate frustration, ambiguity, emotion regulation, and coping skills, a horror RPG like Mothership could
Right.
be just fine.
Call
Um,
of Cthulhu is
I
calling your name.
Exactly. So I really do think that this type of gaming system, whatever kind of the modality is, so long as it's, easily accessible. Like I personally do not find Pathfinder very therapeutic. And that's more just it gets so
Sure.
bogged down in the mechanics at time. I know
It's
Pathfinder folks
crunchy,
out
yeah.
there will definitely like holler at me for this. I'm willing to take it. It's just not my game. I'll acknowledge that. Um, but it is. I think it is the shared collaborative storytelling environment that is one of the biggest things that really, really helps.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that's why we see like psychodrama also being so helpful. Now, psychodrama is definitely different from these types in the sense of like what will happen is there will be kind of one main protagonist, and then you'll develop a
Hmm.
scene with that person around that. So you may have other participants and group members in the scene, but it's really individually centered. Whereas TARPGs tend to have a lot more of that collective community feel because there's no
Okay.
one protagonist. Trust me, I've had to holler, though in my personal game, did have to tell somebody that no, they are not Buffy and they do not get to take that action. Though
Right.
though I,
Right.
I feel like most of us, I don't know, nowadays I'm more of a Willow versus a Buffy girl, but that's just me. Um, but anywho, but I think that's
I,
where we're
I
able
was
to have that practice.
I was really just a Drusilla kind of
Yeah.
person.
Oh,
That was
love
all.
some True.
Right.
Mhm.
I got to tell you, I think I was a little too old for Buffy when it came on.
That's
I was
fair.
just out of graduate school and I'm like, oh, please.
Yeah.
I'm making a lot of money here. I don't need this crap.
Oh no,
Buffy.
that was that like Buffy, Xena, all of those were like, wait, I don't have
So,
to be demure and cute. That's
right.
awesome.
So Xena I loved from the beginning. I didn't Buffy was colored for me tainted. I'm going to say
Mm,
tainted because the movie I adored the movie with what's her face. Now I'm going to forget the actress, but the I adored that story because it was campy, it was cheesy,
mhm.
it
Yeah.
was intended
Like
to be
the
Buffy
older
the
one.
Vampire Slayer.
Yeah, it
Yes,
was so
with
campy.
Pee Wee Herman and how can I not
Oh
how
god,
can
why
I
can't
not
I
remember
can't
her
remember her
name?
name.
I'm gonna yeah, I'm just gonna hurt, but
Oh
for
my
some
gosh.
reason Jessica Simpson is coming to mind, and
No,
that's not
no,
it.
she was too young for that.
For
Um,
sure. But yeah,
what was her
look it up
name?
because
I
it's
am gonna
not
look
gonna.
it up because, it will bother me. Christy
Yeah,
Swanson.
there
There we
we
go.
go,
All
Christy
right, we got
Swanson.
there.
Yes, yes, yes.
And Donald
Um,
Sutherland and Hilary Swank
yes,
and
right.
so many other Luke Perry. Oh my God, what a movie.
I did wait. I didn't think. I don't remember Hilary Swank in that.
Yeah,
But yeah,
she
Luke
played
Perry was
Kimberly. She
great.
was one of the friends.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, anyway, point being that there was kind of tainted for me, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, being able to act, powerful like
Mhm.
Xena was. I loved
Loved
Xena. That
Xena.
was one of my absolute favorite shows.
Also,
I've seen every single episode several
yes.
times, and
Also,
I
fully
mean
was a
it's
queer awakening of just like, oh ho
well,
now, hello.
maybe a little bit there. Yeah, sure. Um, Yeah, I did, because now I'm thinking about like when Cupid, who is also Caesar, who is also
I know.
was because what's
That
his
show
face,
was wild.
Carl Urban, yeah, Carl Urban ended
Mhm.
up playing like four different. All right, so it was great, but I lost my train of thought entirely. I
I
think I
think
had a good one.
we were all centering around this whole idea of, like, creative and expressive
Yeah,
therapies,
sure,
um,
sure.
and I'm only knowing that
Oh,
because, like, I have, like, small little notes I'm, like, trying to track with, so
I I do remember what I was going to ask because like I have a couple again. I had to look. I'm looking at my bookshelf here because I've got like Call of Cthulhu. I've got
Mhm.
Girl by Moonlight and Thirsty Sword Lesbians are two that were like dedicated toward this. Okay, we're going to be super queer here. Go be queer.
Yeah.
Um, like I think there's some value in that. Although for what it's worth, and you know what, I'm going to stop talking. Do you know either of those
I
two
do not
games
know
at
either
all?
of those.
Okay. Well, maybe now's the time to go look at them.
I
But
may have to go, like, go give those a search.
there's another one called Break, which is very based on. I think it's
Mhm.
called Break, based on anime. All of these were Kickstarter
Ooh,
things that I
okay,
that I backed, but or whatever the thing is. But
cool.
um, anyway, they're dedicated queer type experiences. They're
Mhm.
supposed to be queer type experiences, and to me, actually, I wonder if it's more powerful to say let these things happen organically
Mm,
rather than stick yourself into a situation where you get out of it by being queer.
mhm.
And that's a lot of how Thirsty Sword Lesbians works for what it's worth. Um, maybe there's value in saying, well, let your light shine. God, I
Mhm.
just did a video about Katy Perry's fireworks. Now I'm
Mhm.
about, I feel like I'm right on the verge of quoting firework again. But maybe there's more value in that. Do you have an
That's a good
idea on like
question.
organic? Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, I haven't done any research or anything on that yet, but I think you bring up a really good, interesting point about, um, do we make this the explicit focus of the campaign or allow for this to naturally
Yeah.
evolve? And I run into this with
Yeah.
some of my group members every now and again. Like, in particular, I had one group member who was really processing through a lot of race based trauma. And so
Mm.
for them, they played a character that went full Mandalorian. So they were a goblin that had on just full plate armor, head to toe, could not see who they were,
Oh my
and
gosh.
they kept that from the party, kind of portraying themselves as a gnome instead. And so we kind of, like, through time, it ended up like another party member was able to, like, openly share about being bi, and like they were able to, like, really rally around each other and support each other. And this group member, had, like, kind of messaged me offline and was just like, "Hey, I think I may want to have my character share this." And so really I
Mm.
talked with them about, like, okay, so what would that mean? Should I set up a scene? Should I let this just kind
Yeah.
of happen organically? And they wanted it more to have an organic moment. So we actually had, like, they had just finished combat, and we had, like, this real, like, lull between it as they all were kind of, like, figuring out, like, what is happening, because they basically, the thing they thought was happening wasn't it, and so they felt very
Of
hoodwinked by
course.
that.
Sure.
And so this group member was able to have a moment of, like, look, I want for there to be transparency between us. I value y'all. And he took off his helmet, and we were able to kind of see him as a goblin. And that was such a powerful moment for him, of being able to share openly of himself in a group that he
Yeah.
felt very supported by, and being able to then process, like, his lived experience as a person of color, and, like, what that meant and what it was like to be able to share this, especially living in a society so pervasively racist.
Sure.
So that's where, in that moment, if I had tried to create a forced scene to make him, like, share his identity, I would have very
Right.
much been outing this character. So I think
Yeah.
there can be ways where, the organic element helps people to come out and to step into that in their own time. I also have
Yeah.
had group members who wanted more of a scene explicitly. So we did try to, like, really center some of the objectives and goals that they had for themselves in those moments, to kind of create more of, like, a very, like, kind of, curated stage for them to have this
Yeah.
conversation.
Sure.
So I think either way can be beneficial. And I think, it's just really kind of dependent upon what we're, like, trying to seek in that even.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. That was a
Yeah.
beautiful answer. Thank you.
Ah.
It was just very. I didn't expect you to have like a whole like,
I got you.
but that was yeah, that totally worked. Um, so we're unfortunately we're running kind of low on time. I know
Yeah.
that there are people who are going to hear this and go, how do I engage with
Mhm.
Allison Battles more fully?
Yeah.
How do we find you on the internet? Let's just say
Yes.
that.
So I own a private practice called Battle Robin Counseling. And so with this, I am based in Minnesota and licensed in Minnesota. I am also a PsyPAC psychologist. So what that means is I can practice telehealth across state lines. So my practice really centers in providing folks with a kind of more creative and empowered ways of healing that actively center not only kind of multicultural and liberation perspectives, but really emphasize more narrative, dynamic, and relational healing. So I offer individual therapies, assessment, my Roll for Growth group, which is a Dungeons and Dragons therapy group for adults. I also offer a acceptance and commitment therapy skills group for folks who are wanting to get more skill instruction. And
Dang.
I hope to, within the next year, actually launch a pagans in recovery group, which will be more of a
Mm,
AA that is very centered in more kind of pagan, nature-based, and polytheist-based perspectives.
yeah. Yeah. Ooh, that's amazing.
I know.
Super
I'm really
amazing.
excited for that. That's one of those like in the
Yeah.
next year. That's the hope.
Right. No, that's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for all of this. I just want to say, I mean, Allison, like you struck me when I first met you. Not literally everybody. It was,
Yeah, no hands were thrown. Nothing like that. Just
no,
knowledge.
no, no, no. I mean, there was that slight kick to the shin that I still seem to have a little bit of,
I'm
but
sorry. It's just the impulsivity.
I know, and it's me too, so I get it. But I was really struck by just your genuineness when we first met, and I'm so, this has just been an amazing opportunity to meet you and have more conversation with you. So thank you so much for everything you do, and thanks for coming here.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. It was so wonderful to talk to you at the conference and just really excited and happy to have been able to continue our conversation today. So thank you for having me on.
Well, let me go ahead and do a let me go ahead and do some shutdown here. A little
Cool.
bit of closing down the show. I am Amethyst Herrick. I've been speaking with Dr. Allison Battles about let's see, we had some role playing games, some
Hmm.
role tabletop. How did it go? Therapy.
Oh, therapeutically applied role playing games.
There you go.
Big
um,
mouthful. Hmm.
identity, and of course, when you end up rolling that dark elf in World of Warcraft, which you probably shouldn't have done. Just gonna say. All right. Thank you again, Allison. Thanks so much.
Thank you.